Really scary stories, every day. Subscribe, like if you like, turn on the bell so you don't miss new videos.
The garage said my name. Our old place on Wren Court wore blue siding that looked bruised whenever it rained, thin boards, narrow rooms, hallways that seemed designed for people to brush shoulders. For most of childhood my brother and I slept wall to wall, 2 beds rimmed in scuffed varnish, 2 dressers with crooked drawers, a window unit that wheezed like an asthmatic dog. When he left for college, I colonized the vacancy like a settler planting flags, dragged his bed to the attic, slid a desk into its footprint, declared the space civilized with a lamp and 3 neat stacks of notebooks. For a while the room felt larger simply because I believed it was. Homework had a surface that didn't double as a pillow. I could read without his snoring folding into my dreams. Then the city gave him a job and the house reclaimed him. My parents were gracious about it, families bend, Mom said, and my brother moved his duffels back into our old room with the possessive ease of someone slipping on a jacket he'd never truly lent out. Fair is fair, she reminded me, and she wasn't wrong. I had annexed his space once already. So I packed my desk and shirts and pried and took the guest room above the garage, a boxy little capsule wedged beside Dad's office, perched over the driveway like an extra thought tacked onto the floor plan. That room had 2 windows set on different walls. One looked over the cracked ribbon of our driveway and the mailbox that leaned left as if listening to gossip. The other faced the side yard where our pine trees sifted light into green powder. When anyone pressed the garage remote, the floor under my bed quivered for exactly 10 seconds. You felt the opener in your bones. Coins on the dresser made a tiny shivering dance, and the glass water on my nightstand drew rings. A July Friday gave me the house to myself. My parents were at the shore cottage for their weekly summer pilgrimage, sand, old friends, bad Wi-Fi. My brother was in Baltimore for a conference, scheduled back the next afternoon. I ate noodles I'd sworn I was done with, read in bed until the pages thinned into the same page, and clicked off the lamp. The house did that wonderful summer thing where sound diffuses, neighbors talking on porches, a faraway dog, the refrigerator's soft sermon, everything padded, nothing sharp. Peace was a physical creature that curled at the foot of the bed. The garage woke up. The opener churned. The 10-second shiver ran up through the slats of the bed frame and into my ribs. My brain supplied the usual shrug, the dozens of times I'd felt the same vibration, before the situation re-announced itself as wrong. No one was supposed to be here. My parents were 2 hours south. My brother was across the state line. The only living thing in the building should have been me and whatever spiders had the paperwork. I rolled to the driveway window and pushed 2 fingers under the blind. The door had already finished its slow crawl. The space beyond wasn't merely dark, it was darker, an interior square that drank the porch light instead of wearing it. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger peering into a stranger's home. The closet held the aluminum bat my father never threw away, silver, pocked, sticky with old tape. I wrapped both hands around it and felt the latent stubbornness of a kid who wanted a win. On the stairs, everything in me asked to reverse course, to believe in accident or wind. Instead I walked, slower than a normal person because each step tried to announce itself too loudly. While my feet argued with the treads I rehearsed reasonable explanations like lines for a play I hoped would be staged. Mom forgot a prescription and doubled back. My brother's plan changed. The opener misfired. Maybe. Before the turn into the hall that holds my parents' room, the house stopped accepting maybes. Voices. Not TV, no canned laughter, no commercial cadence. Low male voices, close together. The slide of hangers. The dull hush of drawers pushed until they kissed the stops. Strangers building a tactile inventory of our lives one object at a time. I called 911. Whispered the address. The operator had the kind of voice you want in your ear when the floor tilts, steady, unfazed, giving me something simple to do with my hands while adrenaline tried to scatter them. Stay hidden. Keep the line open. Officers are en route. I said yes because my mouth knew that shape. But something older and less intelligent seized the steering wheel. The idea of hands inside my mother's closet flipped a breaker I didn't know I owned. I went anyway. I chose volume over subtlety, made a raw sound to convince my body it was larger, and rushed the doorway with the bat high. Two men, hoodies, masks, boots with gravel ground into the treads. The nearer one turned with pure animal surprise and caught the swing across his shin. He folded with a curse that broke into fragments, scrambling for a blade I glimpsed and then lost among hems and hangers. The second man closed like a door on a hinge. The carpet burned my cheek as I hit. He tore the bat from my hands like I had offered it and set both palms against my throat. Pressure is its own language. It told my vision to narrow and the room to gray at the edges. Inside that tunnel another sentence appeared, placed gently on the table of my skull: I did this wrong. This is where it ends, my parents' floor, my bright idea, my last view the underside of a closet shelf. The thought was strangely polite, almost administrative. Somewhere beyond the crush of blood, sirens unfurled, thin thread, then rope. The hands hesitated. Math happened on a face I couldn't see. He lifted off my throat just enough to bring the bat down. The world split like an eggshell. Light left the room in one clean pour. I came back to a ceiling I recognized and a voice asking me to look at 2 fingers. The back door yawned to the yard, the curtain breathing like a lung. The men were gone. An officer knelt with a presence large enough to make the room feel smaller in a good way. Hospital? No. I heard myself refuse because pride often wears the mask of bravery. I had a headache big enough to cast a shadow. The statement came out in pieces: 2 intruders, one big and smooth, one limping and angry, younger than my parents, accents local. The officers swept the block and returned with what police often return with: possibilities and advice. My parents arrived not faced and terrified. They had a right to be furious with me. I had ignored the instruction designed to keep me whole while help covered distance. Within a week the house bristled, sensors on doors, cameras winking red, motion floods that made raccoons feel photographed. Armored is not the same as safe, but it let us pretend for sleep's sake. Then a small burr of detail began to scratch: all the doors had been locked. The easiest entry was the garage opener clipped under my car's visor, a neat programmable square my father had set up years ago. I had left the car unlocked because bad habits feel like loyalty to place. Whoever came in had known exactly what to search for and exactly when to come. They knew the house would be empty of everyone except me. We never learned who they were. Theories multiplied, suspects did not. After that, ordinary noises arrived braided with their own shadows. A home is a set of sounds you stop hearing. Once you learn that any of them might mean hands, you hear all of them again. Life before you understand your house can be opened like a hand is one kind. After, the walls don't move, but they somehow stand closer. 2. The ER call that wasn't. 6 months ago I moved to Mariner's Crossing to keep an eye on my mother without becoming her constant weather. She collects minor injuries as if they were seashells: hip replaced, wrist once, a twice betraying ankle, and she insists she is fine, absolutely fine, until the universe disagrees. We agreed on a 20-minute buffer, me in a small duplex off Sparrow Lane, her in the brick bungalow she will age in on her own terms. I learned the geography of her days the way you learn a creek's moods: Mondays she's out early, Fridays she's home by 4, the neighbor with the yappy terrier is more observant than he pretends. At 9 on a Wednesday my phone rang with a local number. The woman on the line introduced herself as Nurse Erica from Mercy General's emergency department. Calm, practiced tone. She said my mother had fallen, struck her head, and been brought in about an hour prior. She's awake and talking but asking for you, Nurse Erica said. If you can, come right away and bring a list of her current medications. She knew Mom's full name, exact address, and the year of her hip replacement. She didn't over-explain. She didn't rush or guilt. Everything sounded like the 1,000 similar calls hospitals must make in a week. I grabbed my keys, shoved my feet into sneakers without socks, and drove the 10 minutes to Mercy with my body leaning into the wheel like that could fold distance. The ER smelled like bleach wearing coffee as perfume. Sick light from the ceiling made everyone look the same kind of tired. I gave my mother's name at the desk. The receptionist typed, squinted, typed again, and shook her head. Nobody by that name had been seen or admitted. I said a nurse had just called me from this department. I repeated, Nurse Erica, so I wouldn't sound like I was inventing a person to punt blame toward. The receptionist's sympathy was real and steady. Her answer didn't change. Maybe try calling her, she suggested gently, as if speaking to someone who might be standing too close to their fear to see around it. I stepped back outside into the softer dark where the parking lot lights make their small insistence and called Mom. She answered on the second ring, groggy and offended in the way people are when sleep is kidnapped. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing, I said, and everything in me crawled at the word. She was in bed. She had not fallen. She wanted to know if I had lost my mind. I promised to bring pastries in the morning as penance and hung up with my heart still going like I'd sprinted. Realization slid in with the precision of a scalpel. Someone had wrapped truth around a lie to pull me out of my house. They'd used facts about my mother the way a fisherman uses the right lure for a particular river. I drove home too fast. The front door was closed exactly as I'd left it. 3 steps inside, denial collapsed. The living room wasn't trashed, it was interrogated. The TV and laptop had been handled decisively, sure, but the theft branched in directions burglars don't usually bother with. Frames stood empty with the back tabs pinched open like tiny bent fingers. The medicine cabinet upstairs had been emptied with bureaucratic thoroughness. A shoebox of letters and documents lay thinner by a quarter. They'd taken objects that carry a person inside them, photos, prescriptions, scraps of handwriting. Pawn shops don't pay for a life's outline, but other markets do. I called the police and repeated the call script as faithfully as a stenographer. The officers were kind and unsurprised. This wasn't their first. Whoever rang me had enough true detail to make the lie economical. We filed a report. They dusted the obvious surfaces and found the usual rich harvest of my own fingerprints. Then they left me in rooms that felt like they had been arranged for someone else to view and sign off on. In the days after, I did the civilian version of detective work, browser tabs, long conversations with my mother about privacy that walked the line between loving and patronizing, questions for the pharmacist who knows her by voice, a check of neighbors' cameras. One doorbell a block over caught a hooded figure stepping onto my porch half an hour after my phone rang. Gloves. Head down. Efficient. I imagined them standing in my doorway, looking at the photographs that had watched me grow older, and choosing to slip them out of their frames as if that were a kindness. Nothing further happened. That should have helped. It didn't. I layered on a Ring camera, motion lights, a smart lock that blinks its own pulse, and automations that make my phone chirp when a leaf sneezes. The alerts soothed me until they woke me. Some nights the spot on the wall where the family picture had hung felt heavier than the frame ever did. Absence is not just nothing, it is a shape that stays. Once your life has been picked up and turned over, gravity never quite returns to its old loyalty. 3. The Tenant with Papers. My rental sits on the inside of Maple's lazy curve, a one-story with a porch that gathers leaves and a railing that needs paint whether or not you give it any. The neighborhood is the kind where people wave from cars even if they don't know your name, and you learn to tell who is home by which curtains are open. Routine suits me, dishes every night, laundry on Thursdays, running shoes by the door like a promise I mostly keep. At 11 on a Thursday I was aiming for bed, teeth brushed, lamp off in the living room, when someone started hitting the front door with the kind of insistence that belongs to fire alarms and debt collectors. Not knocking. Beating. The porch light might as well be a candle in a wind, the side light doesn't show faces unless they press to the glass. I could make out only a silhouette trembling with purpose. I'm big, and I make poor decisions when tired. I opened the main door but kept the screen latched like a sane person impersonating himself. The man on my stoop hummed with a jittery voltage. Mid-30s, hair doing its own math, clothes that had lost a long argument with a laundromat. His eyes were glass marbles rolling faster than they should. Before I could ask who he was, he barked that this was his house and that I needed to get out. He promised to call the police in a tone that made the word police sound like a spell he could cast. I tried the calm script. Wrong address, friend. He didn't downgrade. He upgraded. He began listing house trivia like achievements. The master bedroom door will smack the toilet if you swing it too wide, the back door only unlatches if you lift while turning, the hall closet smells like pine stain when it rains. Every line landed. I felt my mouth dry up like the inside of a shell. He slid a manila folder through the gap under the screen. Inside, a lease bearing his name and my address, dated 6 months before I moved in. Envelopes, too, bank offers, utilities, junk mail, all addressed to him here. Then he raised his phone and opened a gallery that made the porch tilt. Photos, him on a gray couch that matched my gray couch, him at my stove stirring a pot identical to mine, him asleep on a bed with the same scratch on the headboard as mine. Selfies with people I'd never seen, all framed by angles I recognized because I live inside them. One picture wore the caption, July 4th. The 4th I remembered had been quiet, pizza, a folding chair, fireworks thumping the sky like a distant heartbeat. For a minute, reality offered an uglier version of itself. I considered that there might be a hole in my memory big enough to drive a life through. Photographs are persuasive liars, they show you the shape first and let your brain fill in the edges. I told him we'd call the police and let them sort it, my voice even, because even is easier to hear. The moment I said the word, his posture flattened into something smooth, like the wind had stopped. He nodded, said he would wait outside while I called, turned from the door, and was gone as if the dark had swallowed him in one slow blink. The officers were brisk and convinced. Likely mental health case, one said, the way you might say, likely raccoon, if a trash can tips at night. Lock up. If he comes back, call. They suggested I check with my landlord in the morning about previous tenants. They did not look at my lease or his folder. Midnight policy is a blunt instrument meant to keep the night short. With my landlord's help, I tracked down the prior tenants. They'd lived here 3 years and didn't know the man. My landlord, who has owned the place since dial-up, had never rented to anyone by that name. Their certainty lay heavy in my hands, factual and useless. It did nothing to sand the edges off the photographs I had already seen. 2 weeks later I came home a little after midnight from a friend's birthday. From the threshold the house looked correct, still, undisturbed. Then the errors resolved out of the pattern. A drawer slightly crooked, like a mouth after a mean joke. The hall closet reorganized by a hand that had the right intentions and the wrong memory. The medicine cabinet open with bottles standing where they hadn't stood. The TV remained, the laptop sat exactly where I'd left it. The point hadn't been theft. It had been search. Locks were unbroken. The frame was unsplintered. Whoever entered had used a key. The police took that visit seriously. My landlord did too. We rekeyed the place that day, front, back, shed, even the gate to the yard, and added deadbolts that make a sound you feel in your sternum. Cameras went up like extra eyes. The working theory is sensible enough to live with. An unstable man convinced himself this is his home and came looking for the life he believes he misplaced. The folder was forged or lifted from somewhere similar. Keys are easy to copy if you shadow a person long enough and know which counters don't ask questions. There is another theory I pretend to dislike because it sounds like a story you tell yourself when evidence won't sit still. A friend floated it over beers, sometimes truths come in pairs. Maybe there's a house shaped exactly like this one where his photos are unarguable, and once in a while the two addresses brush shoulders at the threshold. I don't subscribe. I do, however, Find myself pausing on the hallway runner with the lights off, listening to boards remember the weight of a stride that isn't mine. The camera pings at 3:12 a.m. with a clip of nothing, and I am suddenly convinced the clip is of exactly the thing it could not show. Locks help. Neighbors who look up when tires crunch gravel help more. Mostly I live the same way I did, work, dishes, a steady orbit, but the folder lives in my desk beside a fresh lease printed in ink that hasn't faded yet. Some nights I dream the documents trade places while I sleep, and in the morning the house fits me perfectly, which is not at all the comfort it should be.
Really scary stories, every day. Subscribe, like if you like, turn on the bell so you don't miss new videos.